You said that just as I coached you to do. So A+ for that, Pete. Thank you for that. Looks like we may have short a few people, but we will proceed anyway. This is our last meeting in March, and we are on the right side of winter. We're heading into spring, so that's always a comforting thought. And I guess now for those in attendance, if you please put your cell phones on ring or vibrate or shut them off, so we won't be interrupted. I usually like to start off meetings when I'm a Toastmaster with a few jokes to hopefully get the meeting off to a good start. This is a joke between a teacher and a student. Teacher says, "Billy, what does a chicken give you?" Billy says, "Meat." Teacher says, "Very good. Now, Billy, what does the pig give you?" "Bacon." Teacher says, "Great. Now, Billy, what does the fat cow give you?" Billy says, "Homework." So, not a very nice student. He may end up in detention. That's not a good response to that. I'm sure the teacher did not appreciate that. Another one, child asked his father, "How were people born?" And so his father said, "Well, Adam and Eve made babies, and their babies became adults, and they made babies, and so on." And the child heard that and then went over to his mother and asked her the same question. And she told him, "Well, we were monkeys, then we evolved to become like we are now." Well, the child ran back to his father because there was two conflicting views, and the child said, "Father, you lied to me." At which the father replied, "No, your mom was only talking about her side of the family."
Oh. Oh.
Mom and son may have a talk after we're done that. And what did the duck say when he bought lipstick? "Put it on my bill." So, all right. Got some more jokes if the need warrants. I guess I will go ahead and give an introduction for Jim. He's kind enough to give me this introduction. Jim Squires is currently serving on the City Study Commission. Since 9:30 this morning, he has manned a booth at the Epic Center asking Glendive residents to fill out a questionnaire. Jim prepared a training document in PowerPoint form to inform Glendive citizens about their form of government, the services it offers, and what options we have available to us under Montana Code. This presentation has met resistance from fellow commission members. Does Jim say too much, or does he say too little? Does he seem to be promoting one form of city government or another? Please help me welcome Jim Squires to share his information on the options Glendive voters have.
Thank you. How many minutes? 8 to 10. Okay. Thank you, Alan. Being elected to the City Study Commission has been an interesting challenge. Sometimes we are understood, and sometimes we're misunderstood. Sometimes we get ahead of one another. This presentation starts with this question, and I've asked this question probably more than 20 times this morning to people going through the EPEC Center down there, pointing out that we really do need feedback. And it's amazing the number of people that have responded to this. I have talked to a lot of people. I would say personally I've talked to 20 people. Gary Kirkpatrick, who is manning the booth with me, has probably talked to nearly the same number of people. it has been a very productive morning for us. We've getting some of the surveys are turned back in. Our purpose is this. The purpose of the study commission is to study the existing form and powers of a local government and the procedures for delivery of local government services and compare them with other forms available under the laws of the state. That is our legislated mandate. We are trying to do exactly that, nothing less and nothing more. Now, in Montana Code, local voters have two options, and those options are these that are on the screen. First of all, the voters choose. The first choice is to accept general powers. Those are granted by state legislation, and basically then that puts legislators in the position of telling cities how they will function. Give them a choice, and so that's the level of authority is through the legislators. Second is the concept of self-governance. Another term for that is home rule. It's authorized by legislation. Montana is one of the states that does have home rule available through its legislative action. Again, this is something that comes back to the choice of the voters. Do you want to have home rule or self-governance? So those are the two options that we have. So what are the options? Well, let's go through and look at this slide. The first option there that I have in kind of an off-color rust is a commission. We are not eligible for this because we are over 2,000 in population. But this is exactly the way our county commission functions. Elected officials, but they have no executive. Our county commissioners take turns each year being chairman. Gary Kirkpatrick will probably be chairman in 2 years from now, after he's been on for a full 2 years. The second of the options that we have available to us is currently what Glendive is using and is working. It is called a city or a commission executive form. And note here that you have a code identification 7-3-201. That's a key thing. All of our mayor and city council are elected. You'll see this in a graphic momentarily. The third is the commission manager. A city elects its city council, and then they proceed to hire or appoint a manager. Now, I think the first and obvious thing is that when you hire a person to manage your city, he will make more than the $1,917 a month that we pay our mayor in Glendive, Montana. Gary Kirkpatrick told me this morning that after visiting with the city manager in Belgrade, who makes right at $125,000, and I compare that to the less than $24,000 that our Mayor Jimison receives, I said, well, there's about 100,000 reasons exactly why we have what we have, and we have an excellent mayor who, incidentally, is well recognized throughout the state of Montana. Jerry is well known and highly complimented by people virtually everywhere in this state. That was a very pleasing thing to have people, oh, you're from Glendive. Jerry Jimison's your mayor, isn't he? Wow, and these are people from Dillon or Polson or places that we don't even know how to get to. The third on this, or the number 4 here, commission presiding officer. This designation, 501, you elect a commission, and then you have the option to elect or appoint a presiding officer. And then the 5th of the list, but the 4th real true option to us as a city is the home rule charter, which will incorporate a mayor and a city council or a presiding officer or a manager. Here is a graphic describing this. Here's what we have currently in a graphic form. Voters elect a mayor, and they also elect the commission, the city council. The mayor's duties then, reflected by these are he appoints, with the consent of City Hall, the various department heads for police, for fire, for public works. He appoints the city clerk, and her appointment is approved by the council. He appoints the treasurer, the city attorney, recreation service, and information services. These are appointments, but they're subject to the city council's approval. The next option is somewhat similar. The voters elect the commission or a city council, who then in turn chooses from amongst its members one to serve as mayor. This is a little bit different. Now, I don't know who in Montana utilizes this particular system, but again, we have the same scenario where that mayor does exactly the same things that our mayor would do. However, and we'll get to some exceptions here in a moment. It's easy to follow the rules if the rules are consistent, but the rules don't get consistent under each of these different guidelines. The next is a commission manager. Very similar. A city council is elected, and they appoint the manager. The manager then is the one that does those same things that the mayor would do. He appoints with the consent of the council, the police, fire, public works, clerk, treasurer, city attorney, recreation service, and information services. That individual is going to cost you a lot more money, as I indicated earlier. Now, there's another form, 501, in which you incorporate a couple more steps. It's as I described earlier. The voters, first of all, make a choice. Do we utilize general powers, or do we go and have home rule or self-governance? Those are they mean the same thing, but one is more descriptive than the others. The city council or the commission then elects or appoints a presiding officer. That presiding officer then does exactly the same duties that the mayor or other manager would do. Appoint the various department heads and staff for the city office. Now, here is that same one in writing. The only thing I would really like to add here is the last 2 bullet points. It's nonpartisan, and the presiding officer has a term of 1 to 2 years. We have 4-year terms in our city council and mayoral position. Now, here is the thing that complicates everything. Dillon's rule, back in the early 1900s, it was determined that if there's a question about local government's power or authority, the local government does not have or does not receive the benefit of a doubt. It is very limited. And that's why the options that I showed you of 201, 301, and 501, each one of them is somewhat different, but not much. The only option that offers some latitude and actually well defines the mayor and city council role is a charter. And under Dillon's rule, one must assume that the local government does not have the power in question. If there's any reasonable doubt whether a power has been conferred on local government, then the power has not been conferred. This is known as the rule of local government powers. Home rule, Montana is a home rule state, and I'm already out of time. I'm not out of material, obviously. The home rule charter, we've been through this one time together, the same, all of us. Here are those cities in Montana that are chartered. The largest city is Billings. In 2010, 165,000. The smallest chartered city is Saco, number 28 on the list, with 197 population. There are several communities in there the size of Glendive. Now you notice that Butte is not in that list, and the reason for that is Butte and Anaconda are in 2 different counties, and they both have combined city-county governments. They are chartered, however. Now, Glendive offers these services, and these are in alphabetical order: ambulance, fire, garbage collection, parks and recreation, police protection, water, and sewer. And we have to always ask ourselves, what services do we want? And after asking that, we have to ask, which services are we willing to pay for? So I failed to bring them, but we have a questionnaire. If you get a city water bill, you will be receiving this water bill in with your water bill this month. So please take the time to fill it out. It will cost you a 49-cent stamp unless you drop it off at City Hall. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Alan. Certainly a lot of things to consider, very important things to consider. And we, my wife and I recently moved back into the city limits, and we currently receive a water bill. So we will be filling out that questionnaire, and being a small part of this process that the study commission is trying to go through, and I think it's a good thing, that something that needs to be done every now and then, and I commend you, Jim, for being on the board and being the head of that commission. Thank you. We were supposed to have, Nancy was supposed to be here as well, but she could not make it, but it sounds like Pete may have a pocket speech available. I'm not sure what it will be. I don't know if you want, did you want someone to evaluate your speech for that then?
I'll grab my manual and give it to Jim and ask you to time.
Okay.
I'll just hand it to Jim.
Okay.
Should I come up?
Yep.
Thank you.
Please help us welcome Pete Bruno.
Take that.
What? Back to graduate school at your age? What were you thinking? Fellow Toastmasters. Indeed, I now share one thing with Alan's daughter. We're both Bobcats, and for me, it's again. So as we go ahead and enjoy this season in our lives, I've got good news and maybe bad news. So what's the secret? What's the secret to going to college at this age? Think about the options. Think about the options. Your kids are working in college. They're off doing something. And what can you do? Vocal variety. What can you do with all of that recliner time? My brother suggests, he's also about to retire. You know what I do really well, he says? Watch and cheer for the Patriots. How much is 500 times 12?
6,000.
6,000. So I'm making 6,000 investments in MSU's online education for 1 year. Now, that's an investment in your and my community. How did I ever get started in this foolishness? blame Ken Corpy. Ken, who's retiring this year, for 3 years has been putting a bug in my ear. Hey, Pete, why don't you take the LAC course, then you can teach it when I retire. LAC, licensed addiction counselor that's needed locally. I went to a meeting about 6 months ago, and Tim Anderson, who's the clinical director of District 2, Alcohol and Substance Abuse Treatment, started talking about how short we are on licensed addictive counselors in eastern Montana. And then last spring, we had some people come for our mental health day. By the way, you guys could help with that this year too. But we had some people come from out of town for our mental health day. And they started to talk about the dramatic increase in boom areas of people spending their excess income on illegal drugs. So on the one hand, we've got an increased demand for addiction counseling and a decreased supply of addiction counselors for some reasons, because the addiction counselor program at Dawson Community College has been defunct for lack of interest and is right now being redesigned and reoffered next fall. But the other reason is people who are graduating, as I hope to do, from Bozeman are finding that it is no less expensive and possibly more expensive to live in eastern Montana since rents have doubled with this boom. So we've lost some of our advantages, but just yesterday I was interviewed for an hour by someone graduating from Portland, Oregon, going to eventually be a licensed clinical professional counselor, who's very interested in helping people with addictions, and going to have a phone call today from Sandy Eichmann, who also practiced locally. Very interested, and fortunately married into a well-known Savage family. So he said to me, well, you know, what would it be like for me working in eastern Montana? You know, do you guys kind of prefer local people? I said, just drop the name of the family you married into and you'll be considered local. So he was very encouraged with the idea when he finishes this spring in looking into setting up practice here in eastern Montana, which would be a real benefit because since Sandy has retired, there really isn't anyone particularly labeled as a Christian professional counselor. So I look forward to his decisions. But getting back to the joys of graduate school, I am going to promise you that even if you realize once you reach age 65, you can go to school in Montana tuition free. Let me repeat that, tuition free. So how come I'm making 6,000 investments into MSU? Because you still have to pay the online education fees. But at least I'm not making 12,000 contributions to MSU Bozeman. Yeah. Because as a resident and as a senior citizen, one gets their tuition waived. There are some people who have tuition waived that are paying virtually nothing to go to college. So in conclusion, my big point is this. If the kids are gone and you're wondering what to do for your community and what to do with spare time that you have. Trust me, enrolling in graduate school will take care of all of those problems. Alan? Thank you. I may stick around because you may be introducing the tabletop master.
All right, sounds good, Pete. Yeah, I went back to school, back to college, probably 8 years ago, and I found that I kind of had an advantage over the younger students. I did not have to worry about a social life. I did not have to try to impress anybody because I know that I wasn't cool, and I didn't care if I was cool. So being an older student did help me to study more and try to impress people less, and it was successful for me. So I wish you all the best, and I know you will do well, Pete. I guess those are the two speeches that we have today. And do we have enough speeches to actually vote on a winner? Or,
We do.
Okay.
We
I
do.
guess I will invite everyone to vote for the best speech at this time. And while you're doing that, I will introduce our tabletop master, Pete Bruno. So Pete, will you come up and enlighten?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alan. So in light of the people who competed on the speech, I suppose Alan better count those, and I'll count tabletop. So we'll send those ballots to Alan. Fellow Toastmasters, regrettably, with the jokes that Alan told, he reminded me of the joke I absolutely must tell before we commence with the table topics. Perhaps you have heard the school jokes about little Johnny, kind of classics. Well, this one involves Johnny and his pastor. The trouble that this particular Johnny was having is the one that we psychologists call kleptomania, and which us regular people call, if it's not nailed down, it's gone. Well, Mom, being a good parent, asked the pediatrician what to do about this, asked the school psychologist what to do about this, but Johnny's behavior was unchecked in spite of her best efforts. At last, she thought, maybe I should go ahead and talk to someone like Pastor Jim. And so she goes to the church, and Pastor says to her, sure, let me try to talk with Johnny. I think I can really help him with this problem. So as the pastor's waiting for Johnny to come in, he thinks, you know, what Johnny is lacking is he does not yet fully understand that God is omnipresent, sees and knows everything. So his treatment plan is to go ahead and impress Johnny with the fact that God is everywhere and that God is always watching, and therefore deter Johnny from stealing all this stuff. Johnny walks into the pastor's office. The pastor invites him to have a chair and opens the conversation in just this way. Johnny, where's God? Johnny jumps up out of his seat, runs out of the room, goes home and starts packing his little backpack. Mother trails after him, finds him packing, and says, Johnny, what's wrong? Mom! The pastor says God's missing and he's trying to blame it on me. Without further ado, we have got some great table topics, and just so we don't miss the really outstanding ones. I'm going to pre-select them for my poor fellows. So let's start with Jim. And we'll give Jim this one. And let's go for, minute and a half. Okay.
Mr. Table Topics Chair, visitors from New England marvel at our lack of fall foliage and how to them we seem to go from winter to summer without spring. Yesterday, two boys were overheard arguing whether it is now winter or spring. How can you tell? Fellow Toastmasters, anytime I can walk in the front door of Glendive Community Hospital in shirt sleeves and not be uncomfortable, it is not winter. It is something other than that. That's my short response. My long response will probably remain unstated, but if it walks like a duck and shines like a duck and sounds like a duck, believe me, and I see ducks flying in the air, it's spring. Good tabletop picture.
Thank you. Okay. Continuing with having fun, Alan.
Mr. Neil Topics person. Punxsutawney Phil is billed as the world's most beloved and furry seasonal prognosticator, and apparently even if you barely see the shadow, we have 6 more weeks of winter. What's your opinion on using wildlife behavior to predict weather? I've often heard that if it's going to be a bad winter, the bushes will be full of choke cherries or berries or something. If the animals are that are going to be subjected to winter weather, there's going to be a bad winter. They usually grow more bushier coat to better insulate them against the upcoming winter that's going to be difficult. As far as using a rodent to predict the weather, I mean that's probably the least reliable, and I think it's more out of habit or superstition, or it's been done this way for all these years. But I think certain animals have a right to predict weather, but Punxsutawney Phil certainly does not, and that's my opinion. Thank you.
Well done all. I'm going to turn control of the meeting back over to Alan to finish us up. Thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you.
We were all invited to vote for the best table topics person, and we'll give that duty to Pete, since Jim and I would probably cancel each other out. So at this time, I guess I'd like to introduce our general evaluator, Pete Bruno, so he can give us a call for each evaluation, Town's report, and general comments on the meeting. So Pete,
Okay, from right here then, and let's think. Okay, yeah, we can do this from right here. We will go ahead and I'll start with the general evaluation. I'll call on the evaluators because I can prognosticate the future better than Punxsutawney Phil, and assume that we will end on time, if not better. And so we'll go ahead and after that general evaluation, and I'll report the times as best I have them. The lights I saw, I was close to about 7 minutes, so that's what I put down. And the other times I've got in writing for you here, Jim. So that said, for a small number of people, this is almost a demonstration meeting. Each of us taking the different roles and doing them well. I couldn't criticize this meeting at all, although I'm sorry we couldn't hear Nancy's speech. And Donna will be gone again next time as well for our officers meeting, but Rochelle will be with us. And just to remind you that that is the second, I think. Anyway, it's the first Thursday. So I think a very good meeting, and it's because of both our ability to work within the limits of the Toastmasters meeting and to be flexible within those limits. So I've had a great time, but I generally do with you guys. So that being said, let's ask for Jim's evaluation of my off-the-cuff local variety speech, and then I'll evaluate his.
Thank you, Pete. I didn't quite catch the title, whether it was Back to Graduate School or The Joys of Graduate School. I have both noted here, and you could pick out which is the title that you chose. This is all about vocal variety. It's the one where we talk about rate and pitch and quality and expressiveness and organization of the presentation and that sort of thing. Pete, there was some really valid new information in that for me. I learned several things. And since I'm going to be much older than 65 in a couple of weeks, I thought, wow, if I wasn't busy enough, I've got one more potential thing to do. As far as offering a suggestion, don't change anything, Pete. The information, obviously you were very dramatic. There was a lot of body language incorporated with your vocal variety. It fit, and it fit well. When you can incorporate those two things, the eye contact, the body language, the vocal variety, you can't get much better, and then you're looking at content. The content was excellent because there was new, well-shared information. All of those other items were better than good. Don't change a thing, Pete. That's why comment.
Thank you, Jim. Then I'll go ahead and give Jim's from here. Just note Jim's time, you know. Now I can start my own. Jim, your speech to us, the technical briefing from Technical Presentations Manual, asks just a few questions. I think I'd like to begin, though, by saying that overall, your presentation needs a few more minutes, as you noted. However, it is so much improved from your first draft. I really enjoyed it, and there was only one place, and then you seemed to catch that little squint in my eye and explain that part well. So in whole, the presentation was very well explained. At first, I thought, it might be good to have a handout. And that was because you started off kind of fast, but then by the middle, you were at a real good pace, I should say, with spaces in between things, where I felt as though we could keep up and digest what you were presenting. So overall, interesting, excellent. The material being suitable, excellent, with the graphics much improved. In regard to main message, excellent, and especially helped by the introduction that Alan did as well is your statement of purpose. Both of those together got you off to a great start so that we could be with you. Excellent in terms of the data, the PowerPoints, and excellent in terms of the material presented. And so overall, excellent. The only suggestion I could think of would be to pause a bit more, to do what us psychologists allow people, and that's called technically chunking, sort of a pause to wrap our minds around things. So with that, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the improvement. So we're back to Alan, then. I have completed mine. Oops. And I suppose Alan should get the votes for best speech evaluation too, as he's a non-participant.
I guess I will not be voting on table topics. People vote for that one, but as far as the speaker, I would have to say that Pete, you were probably the best speaker today. And also, yes, thank you. And I believe that you're the best evaluator as well, so a double win.
Second that.
And so I guess we just have the best table topics, and Pete will vote for that. And you have a vote?
It was extremely close, but we laughed more at Alan, so Alan won.
Oh, yeah.
It was the rodent comment, I think, that pushed it
Yes.
over the top.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we've, as Pete mentioned, I think we've had a very good meeting, even considering the lack of a lot of people here. We pitched in and did what we could to facilitate the meeting to be exciting and interesting and invigorating, and so I think it was a good meeting. Pete, you have?
I could give a brief counter report because we've made history. All I was able to record was one each
Wow, hey, that's progress.
for all three of us.
All right. Wow, that's progress. That's a record in the right direction, right, Pete?
Absolutely correct.
So I will guess award these best evaluator, best table topics to Pete. And unless there's something else that we need to add,
Thank you.
and I guess if there's nothing else, we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Alan. You do a good job with leading under changing circumstances. You do. During your times, Jim, I'll